years. Your former colleague at AEI, Norm Ornstein, wrote a book several years ago about what he viewed as a kind of moral bankruptcy of the party already. When did this begin?
The trend begins, I think, in reaction to disappointment with the Bush presidency in which I served, against a reaction against the economic disappointments in the Iraq War, of which I was a supporter, and the party began to move in a more radical direction. When I say radical, toward economic individualism, toward a more plutocratic politics, at exactly the same time that the American middle class, from which the Republican Party had historically drawn its strength, was getting into bigger and bigger trouble. And especially white America, from which the Republican Party, again, has disproportionately drawn its strength, was getting into particularly big trouble with diseases and addiction. So that the party had moved away from its voters. And that's the beginning. That's the beginning of the rot. And the book opens with a series of sort of the steps down which the American political system is tumbling. And although this is primarily a Republican story, I think it's true of both parties that since the end of the Cold War, they've been playing the political game much more ruthlessly than they did between 1945 and 1990. That's again one of the themes of the book. Is I don't think we understood at the time how much the Cold War limited what the parties did to each other, because the country was in a deadly lethal great power competition, depended on presidential leadership. And so the president had to be respected, the president had to be respectable, and the parties had to set some limits on what they did to each other in order to ensure that the president could lead in this deadly struggle. With the struggle behind us, the party competition has become much more savage, and the president has become a person it's much less necessary to respect and much more just an ordinary party leader.
This is the mutual toleration norm, right? The political scientists talk about between the parties. Now, you write also that during this first year of Trump, so much of the attention has been on the president's, bullying or raging or his tweets and unpredictability. But you say the most radical attack on American norms of governance in his first year were attempted by the regular Republicans in the House and in the Senate.
Right.
What were those most radical attacks?
Well, they undertook two gigantically expensive pieces of legislation, this huge tax cut and the repeal of Obamacare and the replacement with a new kind of medical system. Details to be filled in later. And they did all of this without hearings of any kind, and with the costs and benefits produced at the very last minute in ways that really were not well done. And that was especially true of the tax bill. To this day, no one knows what the true fiscal cost of this bill is going to be, because the bill creates so many possibilities for arbitrage and gamesmanship. I mean, that you have to estimate, well, how many people really are going to take advantage of these new pass-through LLCs? They're so complicated. The regs haven't been written yet. You don't know the answer to that question. So you don't know how much individual income tax you're going to lose from high-income taxpayers. But so the country was invited to buy a pig in the poke twice, without hearings, without opponents of the legislation getting a chance to be heard and to present expert witnesses of what this would mean. That's a real departure. Big pieces of legislation. I mean, again, we've been getting hastier. Obamacare passed more hastily than major pieces of legislation in the past. But I mean, Obamacare was a model of legislative procedure compared to what happened after 2017.
I want to talk a little about the people around Trump and the administration and in the White House. There were those very early on who signed public letters stating their opposition to Trump especially in the national security realm.